Hey everyone, Stacks here. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm checking out Powers of 10 number 5, and I'm going to call it Powers of X throughout because for some reason my mind cannot call this Powers of 10 on a regular basis. So that being said, I hope I have the mental acuity later to deliver on some of the plot points discussed, especially with the Phalanx, because it just bent my mind a little bit. Of course, giving credit where credit is due, Jonathan Hickman continues to deliver on the storyline. RB Silva on the pencils and inks, and then Marte Garcia on the coloring has been absolutely fabulous throughout this entire series. So far, the Powers of 10, Powers of X books have basically been happening in 3 timelines. The X0, which is one like current year, X1 10 years forward, and X3 1,000 years in the future. And this one's no different. It starts with an ominous quote from Professor Xavier saying, "They will think we are doing one thing, but the truth is we are doing something altogether different," which just sums up this Hickman X-Men run, at least so far. It's just, I think everybody's anxious to see where he's going with this. So starting off in year 1, Professor X is sitting having a conversation with Forge, and Forge is they're discussing the possibility, the feasibility of being able to upgrade Cerebro. Because we got a peek into the new Cerebro in House of X number 5, we know what Professor X is striving for here, and Forge is telling him basically some of the limitations that current technology places on this upgrade. And for those of you not familiar with Forge, Forge's mutant ability is basically inventing. He creates things, creates complex machines that do incredible things. So through this conversation between him and Professor Xavier, they discovered that there's 2 limiting factors that are preventing Forge from building this Cerebro upgrade that Professor X wants. The first one is a power source. The second one is data storage. And think about the sheer amount of data we're talking about. I don't know how much, I mean, it's got to be a lot of information you're storing, that if you're backing up a person, you're backing up all their memories, their feelings, everything, and you're doing it on a regular basis. And now think about, you're doing that for 16 million mutants, which they may not be at this moment, but they're planning on expanding to that, to 16 million. So that's including like an annual backup where they back you up to a certain point. And then they are including like weekly backups as well. So it's a ton of data. Well, to solve this problem, they go off-world, and Professor X just smiles about it and says, no, it's not on this planet. And he explains that there's a Shi'ar satellite that's orbiting the Earth. And this provides them 2 things. The first one it provides is an Imperial-designed antimatter engine, which provides them all the energy they need. The second thing that it has is Shi'ar logic diamonds, which would basically provide unlimited data storage, which is exactly what they're looking for. So with all these obstacles overcome, Forge just kind of crosses his arms and says, well, okay, you want me to integrate it into the new system, or you want me to build a completely new one? And Charles Xavier breaks out into this creepy grin and just says, as you very well know, the only person qualified to make that call is you, Forge. The only question is, are you or are you not going to build this for me? And Forge just gets this big grin on his face. And then we cut to an entire white page about Cerebro. And just to highlight a few things about this white page, it talks about Cerebro version 7. Now earlier, Forge and Charles Xavier mentioned basically they were on version 4 at this point. So that means Forge builds 5 and upgrades it twice by the time you get to Cerebro version 7. Another interesting point is it discusses Forge becoming increasingly masterful with Krakoan technology, the integration between biological machinery and other technology. Another item discussed on this white page is the types of backup. Basically, there's a 1-year backup. A 1-year backup is where he backs everybody up, their whole mind, creates a fresh copy of them, and it takes Professor X 3 days to do this, and he cannot be interrupted during that time. The other type of backup is a weekly backup, and basically it's the delta. It's the change from week to week in a mutant, in someone's, in their memories and all that stuff. It's not nearly as much information, so it only takes 3 hours. And the final big reveal on this white page is the cradle locations. This is where all that information is stored. He said he wanted 5 locations to store this stuff, so he has 1 at the House of X, 1 on the Island M, 3 is at the Summer House, 4 is the Point, and 5 is Moira's no place. So I'm assuming that's going to be one of the tumors inside of Krakoa. From there, we jump to X1, the 10-year timeline, and we're at the Louvre with Emma Frost, who is paid a visit by Professor X and Magneto. Now, once again, going back to House of X number 5, we know that Emma Frost is already in a position of power basically at the UN. And similar to the Forge discussion, you're getting the backstory on how she was convinced to take that position. But the conversation with Emma goes nowhere near as smoothly as the one with Forge did. At least not at first, because once she finds out that Professor X and Magneto are working together on something, she's convinced this is probably going to be incredibly heroic or terrifyingly reckless. Now, once they explain to her that they're trying to build a mutant nation state on an island, she loses her mind. She's like, are you kidding me? Didn't we just do that and lose 16 million mutants? You're providing them a target-rich environment. What are you thinking? And Magneto, just cool and collectively, just steely-eyed, just looks at Emma and tells her, while she's going off, just tells her, in a month, the population of Krakoa will seemingly overnight expand from several mutants to well over 100,000. 3 months later, it will be 5 times that. And by this time next year, it could be as high as 2 million. We are not ahead of ourselves, Miss Frost. We are woefully behind. And with that, suddenly they have the White Queen's attention, and they invite her to step through one of the portals to Krakoa with them. And once she sees it, with a sigh, she says, one more time, for the children, tell me what you need. And what follows is a bunch of business jargon regarding the distribution of pharmaceuticals, the miracle drugs that Professor X is about to distribute. As we know, he's leveraging these drugs to countries so that they will ratify and acknowledge the existence of the mutant nation state of Krakoa. And where Emma Frost really comes into this is distribution of this drug, because they feel like they could, well, and rightfully so, they can't trust any other company ran by man to distribute these products. They effectively want the Hellfire Corporation to be the East India Trading Company for mutantdom. And after some contract talk and some bargaining between Emma and Magneto, Xavier pulls the conversation back to the Krakoan government that's being established, in that they will give Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club 2 seats at the council. Well, Emma, rightfully so, asks the question, why 2 seats? And that's when Xavier drops the bomb on her that they're going to need her to bring Sebastian Shaw back into the Hellfire Club. Now that's kind of a kick in the teeth to Emma, because she's worked hard to get rid of Sebastian Shaw for some time, and now that he is gone, unfortunately they need him back, because they need that guy that's going to do the dirty work. They need his network to get into these countries that don't accept the Krakoan government. And they want to use his network to smuggle in the drugs and to smuggle out the people, the mutants. So Sebastian Shaw runs that, while Emma Frost basically keeps her hands clean and is able to work with the governments that do recognize Krakoa. Ever the opportunist, Emma Frost agrees to it, but only if she can get 3 seats at the council. From there, we get a peek at a white page called the Quiet Council of Krakoa. And what this council is, it's 12 members. Most of them are blacked out. You have autumn, winter, spring, summer, and then you have Krakoa itself, which is a 13th and 14th member. Of those 12 members, 8 of them are blacked out right now. You have Professor X and Magneto on the same season, autumn. Then you have spring, you have Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost. Winter, summer, both of them are completely blacked out. My assumption is that a bunch of the big hitters are going to be on here. People like Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister, and probably Exodus. A couple of the other big hitters will be on some of these, and probably some of the X-Men as well. Probably Scott Summers, probably Storm, those guys. It'd be very interesting to see how different entities on this council try to influence pressure and just use their influence in the direction of Krakoa and mutantdom as a whole. Staying with year 10, we jump forward to the summoning, where Professor X reached out and told all these mutants basically the come home line. He reaches out, he says, we're building something, we're really trying to make a difference, I'm extending an invitation to you. And we saw most of these individuals in House of X number 5. What's really interesting, though, is when we end up down in Atlantis. And Namor here, he isn't so easily intrigued. And I love this because I feel like Jonathan Hickman nailed Namor right here. He basically puts it this way, that it's nice to see that Professor X finally realized that you're not human, and you realize that they hate you because you're superior and you always will be. But Namor kills it with this line right here. It's good that you finally figured out. But let me ask you, do I strike you as someone who just now realized how much better I am than everyone else? And do you actually think I believe that you feel that way too? Go away, little man, and don't come back until you mean it. So as far as we've seen, Namor just became the first mutant to tell Professor X and his new Krakoan society, shove it. From there we jump to X3, or X-Men Year 1000. And just to go back and give you an update on what was happening with the Phalanx, as simply as possible, they had submitted their application to the Phalanx, and it was under review, basically, to see if their society was worth ascending into the Phalanx. And what we find out is the Phalanx accepts them, but under some terms. And to sum this up the best way I know how, is basically they're going to be absorbed into the Phalanx, and they will still be sentient. They will still somehow have their sovereignty inside the Phalanx, but the entire planet is going to be consumed by the Phalanx. So that was the trade-off, that they will consume the planet in exchange for them ascending, but still retaining some matter of sovereignty. Now there's a couple things here that really had my eyebrow shoot up, and one of them is this shot here. What looks like the Krakoan tree with a bunch of the Krakoan technology. And it really makes you wonder if at some point Nimrod didn't spawn out of this Krakoan explosion of technology that Forge was pursuing. Because this is a Jonathan Hickman story, we all know that there's more to this than what we see right now. And I can't wait to get this timeline figured out, because this is driving me nuts. There's more to this librarian guy. There's more to this conflict between mutants. At some point, is there a schism between the mutant factions? And I mean, they had what happens? From here, the discussion changes all over the place to stuff that I really don't understand, other than these societies can become so dense with knowledge that they become a singularity. They collapse into a black hole, basically. Now, when that happens, these things are called Titans. And if you have a group of Titans, it's called a stronghold. And a stronghold, they're not the Titans typically are lone wolf. Strongholds, they are very much they're expansionists. Now, beyond a stronghold, you have a dominion, and a dominion is typically just a larger set of strongholds. A dominion typically has more than 10 Titans within it, working and acting in unison to control a particular sector of space. Also worth noting here that there are two primal threats to dominions that they actually fear: Galactus and the singular universal manifestation of life known as the Phoenix. So guys, I can't say that I actually understand what I just read completely. I get the concept that a singularity, there's always something bigger, it seems. There's always the singularity, the Titan, if you will, Titan theory. It expands to a stronghold where it's a grouping of those Titans, and then beyond that, there's a dominion. I understand that there's always something bigger out there, basically. As far as my review for this issue, I think it's all going to be critical world building stuff. I think there was a lot of stuff exposed here, a lot of hints dropped that will be really clear within the next couple weeks. The biggest one I noticed, or I think I noticed, was the tree in the background. It looks very much like the Krakoan tree, or the inside Krakoa. It's just now it's rather than being organic, it looks very machine. So is Krakoa somehow infected, or is what happened with it? It's going to be interesting to see who ends up at these 12 folks that will be at the table for the League of Distinguished Mutants, or whatever we're going to call it, the Quorum of Krakoa. And so I'm interested to see who all ends up in these leadership positions at that. And honestly, I'm still sitting here trying to figure out who Professor X is really going to be revealed to be. Is Mr. Sinister somehow behind all of this? We know he knows what's going on, allegedly, according to the Sinister letters. So, I mean, it's going to be, these next couple issues are going to be really good. I'm really anxious to see where we go with these X-Men titles coming up. I do think the reference to Sebastian Shaw will probably tie directly into the Marauders book. When I first read the description of Marauders, talking about a bunch of pirates going around and helping free mutants or whatever, it sounded really dumb. But now with the storyline kind of bolting into that, it makes a lot more sense. And where beforehand I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to pick that up, I'm probably going to pick it up now, even past the number 1. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to say a big thank you to anyone who's subscribed here lately. Guys, thank you so much for helping my channel grow. As a lot of, I've said before, 85% of the people that watch these videos aren't subscribed to the channel. Helps me a ton if you take the time to go hit that subscribe button. Plus, you'll get the notifications when I post my next videos, guys. Anyways, thank all of you for my channel growth. I sincerely appreciate it, guys. Looking forward to House of X and Powers of X coming up. Next week's issue, I believe, is the name of it is I'm Not Ashamed of What I Am. So it'll be interesting to see who that ties to. Anyways, guys, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Real Comic Stacks out.